Welcome to another episode of The Local Dive. This is Alex Scott, joined by Dean, LaCroix, Drinking, and Sarah.
You're wearing a very LaCroix color today. I feel like.
Thank you for my pink. Is this a
looking summery?
Is this a fleece? What is this called?
Quarter zip pullover.
A quarter zip pullover. Thank you.
A cardigan, but thanks for noticing.
Thank you for noticing.
Also, Ashlyn Portera.
Hello.
And producer Jacob.
Hello.
So we are excited to dive into another episode, and as we do, we will wade into the shallow end with something that I saw from Gary Vaynerchuk that I thought was catchy and worth stealing, called Overrated Underrated. So I'm going to throw out some different topics, and you can share if you think they're overrated, underrated, or
let's go
properly rated. And then once we get through some lighthearted fun stuff, we'll get into the deep dive where we talk about the post-Trump church. So, get your seatbelts on. And, we're excited for another episode. So, very first thing, overrated, underrated, New Year's Eve parties.
I'm going to say overrated. The older that I get, the less fun staying up until midnight or 12:30 sounds, because a number of reasons. One, in COVID, we don't even go anywhere. So there's no fun places to go to. I do think that New Year's Eve parties at your house are fun. It's fun to get together with a small group of friends. But, it's I don't know. The older I get, I'm tired, and then the fireworks go off until 1, and my dog is anxious, and so it's just this whole thing. I'm you can hang out on your couch any night of the week and still be in bed by 11. I sound so boring, but
I would say properly rated to what you said about a smaller group of friends that you want to be around and enjoy. Totally, the idea of going and standing in Times Square could not be more overrated to me.
No.
I will gladly never, ever do that.
Yes.
What about the experience? I'd rather not have the experience.
100%.
I'd rather be inexperienced.
I'd rather not be freezing cold and want to pee on myself.
Well, I was gonna say, don't people wear
see
adult
fireworks
diapers to
for
that?
20 minutes. Yeah, I think there are those people out there.
Okay, you have serious problems
Yes.
if you wear an adult diaper to go stand at Times Square.
I don't need to see a ball drop and the calendar change that bad.
Adult diapers for people that have serious medical issues, not for people that want to go hang out. I would say I have two parts to my answer. I am properly rated if it's just I think another excuse to get friends together.
Fair.
To have friends and do something. Just I'm overrated if you make New Year's a thing. What really changes the next day?
Right.
Like we said last week.
Yay, we made it into a new calendar year where everything's still the same as it was 10 minutes ago.
And Central Time still has an hour to go.
And Australia's been there for a while, so.
And I'm going to forget on Monday to write 21, as it says in the New Year or whatever. I'm going to get the date wrong. But
yeah. They can be fun, but I think that they are definitely overrated for the amount of emphasis that some people, and especially and I've done the whole go out for New Year's and stay in for New Year's, and just the amount of money that you can spend. And I'm not trying to sound like a wet blanket.
And tuxedos are a thing on New Year's.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Now I'm glad you said that. Let me add in one asterisk to this. I think that New Year's Eve weddings are super fun. To me, that's a great excuse to get a bunch of people together.
I'm cool with that.
Because it's I don't know. To me, it's yay, you're actually celebrating something. Then it's not just the clock rolled by.
So as somebody who had the option to do a New Year's Eve wedding, we chose the 30th because I was I am not staying until 1:00 in the morning on the night of my wedding with a bunch of people. So,
but I think they're super fun.
Yeah, New Year's Eve wedding. That sounds granted, I only stay at a reception for 10 minutes. I'm considering staying at Ashlyn's future wedding for 12 minutes, but I'll raise my length
just long enough to go through the dinner line with the bridal party.
Exactly, and then I dip. But
all right.
I didn't mean this to turn into some hypothetical future wedding. So
all right,
moving on.
Yes, LaCroix, overrated or underrated?
So I drink them all the time. So I'm gonna say I think it's properly rated because there's people like me that are trying not to drink sodas for just health purposes. Not that LaCroix is some kind of mineral producing drink or anything. It is that it's helpful because I don't love water because water tastes like nothing. So it's helpful to still get like a carbonation kind of whatever, but not that. And also it makes LaCroix not interesting. Also, I call everything LaCroix that is a seltzery water. Like when you stop at the gas station and go like, hey, can we stop for a Coke? It means like, let's stop for a drink.
Yep.
So if I say, hey, we got me a LaCroix, that could mean bubbly. That could mean anything.
Polar.
So I think the brand LaCroix, underrated. And I think the rest of the family of those drinks is properly rated.
I mean, I think in general it's overrated, but that's just because I feel like it's got a cult following, which means it's probably properly rated or something. But I'm like, I don't know. They're good. I like them. I don't think they're like, I only like them on Whole30. Like I'm almost never, I'd rather give me a Diet Coke a million times over a LaCroix, but I'll drink it. It's fine. So I'm going to go overrated.
I think I would say overrated for the amount of like branding energy that has been put into seltzer waters. Like 5 years ago, I didn't know anybody who drank seltzer water. Like literally, I don't think I knew one person.
Yeah, now you can get like LaCroix bathing suits.
Right. Like now it's like cool. Like people are LaCroix cans for Halloween and like it's like a thing. We're all into seltzer waters. And I am too. Topo Chico is my favorite. I had a deep discussion with somebody about this the other day, and because to me it's the most carbonated and it's in a glass bottle, and so
glass bottle.
Yeah,
Topo
so
Chico
it's like
is where it's at.
Extra fancy. I don't hate LaCroix at all. Like I will drink it. But yeah, I mean I would rather have like diet soda. So I'm not like a hater of seltzer
Properly
water,
rated?
but yeah, so maybe properly rated.
How many would y'all say I drink a day, since y'all are around me a lot and know me well?
Probably like 8.
Yeah, that's
I
probably
was going to
fair.
say 8 to 12.
Probably fair, yeah.
What a box.
It's pretty fair, yeah.
Jacob, where do you fall on LaCroix and seltzer water in general?
I like LaCroix, but I'm going to say it's overrated because there's people who know our church like based off LaCroix. Like our church is associated with LaCroix.
Oh
Seriously?
my gosh.
Seriously.
I thought it was associated with your biceps. Really? Like
Okay.
LaCroix for real? That's
No,
awesome.
for real.
Hey, the gospel and LaCroix, bring
All right,
it.
yeah.
My brother has a famous quote that he said to me, and he said, I didn't know what LaCroix was until I came to City Church. I thought it was a rapper.
That's great.
Wow.
So very overrated.
Glad to know that we're really reaching the city.
Yes.
Influence.
All right.
Keeping the main thing the main thing.
This one will not be controversial at all. Tom Brady, overrated or underrated?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding?
I'll go and I will say underrated, because like too many people that would maybe lean towards overrated just like to hate him because he's very like everybody likes hating the top dog. So, but if you look at his stats, so underrated. Like
Yeah, well, look at Belichick with the Browns. He got fired. Look at Belichick with Bledsoe, very average. Everything changed when he got a quarterback. And not to say Belichick isn't a great coach. He's obviously a great coach, but I think he's a terrible GM. And I think there are, for those who don't know, Bill Belichick is the head coach. I know you know that, but he's also the general manager of the Patriots. Almost said Packers, mercy. That's a rare combo. Not very often you get to be both of those things. He handles all personnel. And he's made some really bad personnel moves to put around Brady over the years. And I think there's missing Super Bowl rings because of Belichick's stubbornness as a GM. I think Brady could have 10.
Eli is very thankful.
Yeah, seriously. So I think he's the greatest team sports athlete of all time.
That's good.
So underrated.
I would agree that he's underrated. I obviously don't follow his career as closely, although I know more than I would care to admit or prefer to know because of you guys. But also judging on his like choice of personal style, I would say underrated there as
Let's
well.
go.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was going to say,
Or maybe
are you basing this decision off of his Met Gala
yeah,
like apparel?
I mean, there it's like we just should all be taking notes, but maybe properly rated for the amount of like swag that he himself feels about himself. Like that's, I mean, I don't think any of us are convinced that Tom Brady doesn't think that he's like the man.
Oh, like the video he does at Gronk after.
Right.
after he
Right.
wins.
It's like, I mean, I'm sure he is a nice, truly awesome person. I hope so. But like, in those moments, like you're feeling yourself. So, but I would say so properly rated for all of his cool factors.
Like I'll send Ashland a text with a video of Brady walking in from his car into the stadium, and like if he's in like the right outfit that just looks so smooth, I'll be like, Pat's by 50. Like it's over.
It's like the
Now
majority
Bucks.
the majority of like my phone storage is from like Tom Brady like hype content. It's like this is weird.
Go Bucks.
All right. Weddings, overrated or underrated?
Oh gosh.
Oh.
Like the American experience of them.
Yeah, let's say that.
Or
However,
like we're not saying like marriage.
no,
like,
no, we are for marriage.
Marriage.
Okay.
Marriage properly rated.
Okay, I just for certain people you need to distinguish
That's
that those
fair.
are different
That's fair.
things.
That's true. But like, yeah, just American weddings, we'll say.
Oh, as someone who's very much around it, out of control. So I'm going to say overrated.
Yeah.
And because what's funny is they're all kind of the same. I said that quietly.
No, it's true.
I was gonna say we had a conversation with I was in a conversation with somebody, and they were like, sort of, you've seen one wedding, you've seen them all. Oh, it's outside. Oh, there's string lights. Wow, never knew. Never knew. This
now
was a
everybody
thing.
wears suits instead of tuxes.
Yeah.
Now, like, it's a centerpiece thing, and you have a chalkboard instead of the program, and
Right.
it tells you where you're seated, and it says, "Please turn off your cameras. This is a picture-free
unplugged
wedding."
yeah.
His drink and her drink.
It's like except for our professional photographer who we paid thousands and thousands of dollars for so that later this could be a very plugged in wedding
Yeah.
on your
Yeah,
social media
in
feed.
pictures where we're not smiling.
Right.
That's a thing now.
Did you give a
I don't think
rating?
I gave an answer. I mean, I would say overrated. I mean, it's like, let me go on record and say it is fun to like celebrate people and these exciting times in their lives. So this is like nothing personal. I have been in lots of weddings. I've attended lots of weddings. So I'm not trying to like hate on them. But I definitely think for the level of like demand they can make of people a part of them, overrated.
I love officiating them, honor when I get asked. I truly enjoy it. And everyone has their own unique story and, all those kind of things. But in terms of the couple but the event itself, it's like, y'all, like it is, I hate to say they're all the same, but like they really, like even from the rehearsal dinner, it's like you have a meal, the groom's dad, says a prayer, and unless the grandpa was a pastor, then he prays. And then there's there's a slideshow and it shows the guy when he's younger and the girl when she's younger, then them together. And then like everybody tells stories and the sister reads hers and she cries. It's all the
Now,
same.
I will say, like, now I'm like starting to like think I'm like gonna ponder this later, but I do think that like in our culture we're so worked up about like how can we have these like best ever experiences, and so I think the aspect of celebration at a wedding like that, like I have been to some weddings where whether they are elaborate or not, like it truly feels like a fun party, like a fun celebration. And that's awesome. So it's not to say that like the bigger and more lavish the wedding, like the worse it is or the more overrated it is. I don't want to give that indicator at all. But it shouldn't be like layers upon layers of like the people there shouldn't be thinking about the expense and the stress of it all, and like that that can be true for any event. It can be a really fun, meaningful gathering, or it can be just like this big ball of stress because you feel like you're having to do something. So
That's well
I think
said.
it really does depend on what, like now I'm, getting all philosophical about it.
But no, that's well said. That's well said. Yeah. And so when by all the same, I mean, like, that's my way of saying also that it's not worth making like so much hysteria and stress and fighting with your mom and, bridezilla. I mean, there's just no place for any of that. I mean, and when they really all kind of turn, the only difference is how much money you spend.
Yeah.
Right. And like, who are we trying to impress? Right. So, yes, I think you put that the right way.
But wedding food for the most part is overrated.
Oh,
Can we
yeah.
agree about that?
Yes.
Yeah, the funny thing, they go for like a tasting beforehand. It's like, y'all, it's chicken. Like a tasting. Like seriously.
I can't wait to have your yellow cake.
Yeah,
with a
seriously.
with a layer of
No,
raspberry.
don't
in
hate
between.
on the fruit fillings though.
But like
Underrated.
but the going to taste is like, y'all, come on.
Wedding cake underrated. You heard it here
Oh, I love
first.
wedding cake.
I was gonna say we stay at weddings until the cake is served. So
We could do
Oh,
a whole
I can't do
segment
anything
on
tomorrow. We have our food tasting at 1. It's like, it's chicken and green beans
all right,
and a roll.
that. Oh my gosh. Moving on.
sister Schubert's if you've paid the caterer right. All right, Crocs, like the footwear.
Apparently they're back. Were you not? I think you and I were in a conversation yesterday, Ashley, where someone was talking about Crocs being back. Was that you and me?
I
Was
don't
that
think it
Al?
was me.
Yeah, it was me.
Oh,
you,
sorry.
and I think Hunter and maybe
Oh,
somebody
sorry,
else.
sorry.
Yeah, don't bring me into this croc narrative.
Yeah, I've never worn Crocs, never owned Crocs, never gonna own Crocs. So like, I'm just like, bleh.
Overrated.
just no comment.
I think they are properly rated, and here's why. I do have some garden boots that are Croc brand, and they keep my feet very warm and dry when I'm having to go pull weeds and do landscaping. I don't have like the kind with the strap behind your back or behind your heel and the holes in them that people like put little
That's the only ones I know about.
Plug-in accessories. No, I don't mess around with that. These are like, come up a little above my ankle. Like it's a gardening boot. Okay. This is like, embracing my homeowner status. So I would say like they're very functional, but let that be a reminder when you go to wear them to like a social gathering that they are functional footwear, and just use your judgment.
They are overrated as a style. They are massively underrated when it comes to comfort. Like they are heavenly when you slip your feet into them. Jacob, I think, has like 8 pair.
I have 1 pair actually, and probably my favorite pair of shoes.
Yeah, like they're
nice.
they're
Oh my
the
gosh.
they're the perfect thing. Like in the garage when you just need to like take the trash out or whatever.
Sure.
Just slip it
You
on.
won't see me wear them to church, but
Thank you.
Yeah, you shouldn't leave the perimeter of the property that you live on wearing them.
I wear
but
like old brown Sperry's as like my version of Crocs. That's why I
there you
slip
go.
on, slip off.
to each their own.
Somebody told me that their dad made a ton of money off Crocs stock back in the day. It was kind of cool. I was like, all right, rock on.
It was definitely a thing.
Panera, the restaurant. Overrated, underrated.
I am going to say majorly overrated. Panera is so good. I am all about some like basic soup and sandwich, material. But for how expensive it is, and their drive-through situation is like, I have been done dirty many times in a Panera drive-through situation.
Dirty at
because
Panera.
it is just like, they need Chick-fil-A to come over and do some training. So I like the inside. It's great for like meetings and stuff like that. Also, they carry Pepsi products, so that's a problem. I just think the whole thing is like, it's not that I hate the food. It's just that there's always some kind of issue, and it's like twice as expensive for what it is.
I have not been in a really long
I was gonna
time.
say,
Years.
Dean, have you been to Panera?
I mean, not really. It's just totally not my scene. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say properly rated. I'm gonna trust Ashton. I feel like Pat Scott, your mom, doesn't do Panera. That's like her scene. I feel like it's just way too.
No.
Yeah.
She'd
I'm gonna go with
she's
Pat
more like Hopkins
or Dog It All.
Dog It All.
Yeah. So I just
one
want to
or the
I just want to
other.
go shout out to Pat and say Pat don't do Panera. So I don't do Panera.
Yeah. Overrated. Just
All right.
for all the reasons Ashlyn said. The ESV Bible translation.
I'm rolling my
So
eyes.
there's an internal. So inside knowledge here. There's an internal City Church staff unofficial war over best Bible translation. And I, as the one who preaches on Sunday, uses the CSB, yet our discipleship pastor, along with his fellow co-laborer Ashlyn,
Our strong
our
advocates.
strong ESV.
In my personal use, I use the CSB when needed for all of our front-facing city church.
I'm going to
work.
say properly read because it's a very good translation. The study Bible
Yeah,
is actually
thank
really
you.
good.
Thank you.
Properly rated.
All I'm saying is that when you go to the Westminster Book website, their cover photo, it says the most important book in the world, and it's the ESV Study Bible.
And you know I'm like closet Presbyterian, so that,
Right.
so that cuts
Yeah.
deep.
All right. Moving on. Super Bowl halftime shows.
I'm going to go most overrated thing in American culture. Number 1.
Maybe.
Yes. Almost all of them overrated. Prince was amazing.
Well, it's Prince.
I know,
I mean,
but
like he's just
still.
its own he's his own
Yeah.
category. He goes by by a symbol.
This is
That's
true.
next level.
Yeah. The artist. He was the artist formerly known as Prince. Overrated, underrated.
Yeah, overrated.
Number 1. Number 1.
All right. I think I know how Ashlyn's going to answer this. Libraries.
Well, it depends on who you're asking, but I mean, I would say underrated. Properly rated to me because I hold them in high esteem.
I definitely thought you were going to say underrated.
Yeah. I mean, I think by and large for the people, they are underrated because they are true community centers. You can go there. You can check out books.
Welcome
for
to the
free.
library. Shh. so much
I
community
didn't say
development.
a social center. I said a community center.
For sign
You
language.
can find everyone can find something for themselves at a library. Also, You can go and see art on display. There are many libraries that are in nice buildings. Tallahassee, we have a little ways to go in that department, although some of our branches, don't sleep on them because they are very nice. But yeah, so let's show some appreciation to your local library.
Our downtown library, named after former Governor Leroy Collins, who's a graduate of
Leon
High School. So
Overrated
shout out
or underrated?
Whoa. We will not go down that road. I would say properly rated, but for me, I'm so high maintenance. I don't want to be reading a book that someone else brought home and flip themselves untouched. And so I'm out on libraries, totally out.
I was going to say public libraries, I feel like properly rated. Personal libraries, very underrated.
That's a good point.
So that's my I don't know. That's my thought. All right. Cultural moment here that if somebody listens to this episode in 20 years may never understand, but Bernie Sanders memes. Overrated, underrated?
Oh, I thought memes were, that was great. Just right. Yeah, they just right. They were fun.
Yeah, I would say properly rated. Give us all of the Bernie memes.
Yes. Yeah, the internet remains undefeated. All right. In honor of the great state of Florida, the city of Orlando.
Oh my gosh.
It's the worst city of Florida, man. I don't get people who love Orlando. I like Disney World, but the lines have gotten so crazy too. Not like I used to. Orlando, it's like there's just no like real culture to it outside of a tourist culture, and like it's Panama City without a beach and more stuff. It's just not my scene.
Savage.
I don't like the magic and like any of that stuff.
I don't know. I think I'm properly rated. Maybe I don't have a strong I don't know. It's fun, but like it's also you're gonna go eat at like Bennigan's and Fridays and Benihana, and it's like just super capitalist. Just like I don't know.
Thanks, Bernie.
I don't. Yeah, like
It is though.
It is. It's like you just go, you spend money, you have fun, which I'm for. I'm not anti-capitalism. It's just like every chain in America that's just trying to make money on tourists, and it's fine.
I mean, I think Winter Park's cool, but like Orlando, it's like ugh. I mean, it gave us Sarah Stevens, our communications director, so like we're thankful for that. But outside of that,
yeah, I just really have not spent a lot of time in Orlando at all. I mean, we went to Disney like several times when I was a kid, but we didn't go, all the time. So I don't have any close friends who live there now, and so I just don't really have like this incentive to go.
So Ligonier's there we go. Rest in peace, RC Sproul.
Reality TV. Overrated, underrated. Massively overrated is the answer.
I think properly rated because it's like the norm now. Like it is TV.
That's fair.
Yeah. Like Dude Perfect, for example, I would consider reality TV, even though it's not like they're not characters in a script. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I was thinking more like the Orange Housewives or the Real Housewives of. They are orange too.
That was pretty
Speaking
fair.
of orange, we can transition to
They are Orange Housewives. But yeah. So, Ashlyn, do you have a
I think
a verdict?
I think they're probably. I think reality TV. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say I think it's underrated in the way that it has like probably shaped our culture more than we know. Although I think that we probably by now hopefully are aware of that. So, I mean, and in terms of entertainment, it's you can get some entertainment out of reality TV. So I'll go with properly rated.
All right. Yes. So on that note, reality TV to the president, which
A form of reality TV.
That's what brought him back to American mainstream.
Yeah, really it was. So as we transition into the deep dive and think about just where we are now as a country, and really in the context of the local church, and maybe the church at large in America, how what are some obviously there were a lot of things that a Trump presidency brought with them in term that's a you can't even name all the things, but maybe as you over the last couple weeks. We're now a few weeks into the Biden presidency and all that transpired early in January. What are maybe some new cultural realities that the church in America has to confront, work through, face, deal with in a post-Trump society?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's so much there. I will say, I think there obviously are a lot of people who, I think there's a lot of people who are breathing a sigh of relief. I think there's a lot of people who are still very much worked up and kind of living in a sort of false reality. If you saw a lot of people buy into conspiracy theory and just some really scary things. I think there's a lot of Christians who are also rightly concerned about what a Biden presidency looks like, and also just in general thinking about the last 4 years. I mean, how much has happened in our country, how much unrest that has occurred, not even everything directly connected to a Trump presidency, but just, what has come to pass in the 4 years that he was president. I think a lot of people are kind of just in this state of like, what's going to happen next? Where do we go from here? I was kind of saw a lot of social media posts over the last few months about, we need to get back to like healing the soul of America. And my question is kind of like, what is the soul of America? Is there a common soul of America? Yes, of course, we all are united as Americans, as people who live, in this country and make our lives here. And we do want a lot of good things for one another. But I don't know. So I think all of our minds are kind of reeling with trying to process where we've been over the last 4 years, trying to wonder about and think about what's next, hope for better days, but also, for many Christians, rightly also having concerns. And that can be wherever you fell on the, whoever you voted for, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm just sort of like in a perpetual state of like, we'll see. I don't really have any kind of strong, I mean, I'm certainly not in the position to make these kind of predictions anyways, but I don't have any strong feelings about, where is this going to go next in terms of, I'm just kind of like, we have to wait and see if the past 4 years have taught us anything. It's that, things are possible beyond at least my wildest imaginations, unfortunately. And so, I am burdened for the church. I also think that with a new president, yes, of course, major change will come, but also, there's still a lot to kind of think about and process through with the Trump presidency that we're not going to understand maybe for decades, compared to what we can perceive and understand now. So, obviously I'm trying to listen to people who are much smarter and more experienced and older and wiser than I am to help me think about what the next 4 years can look like. But it's definitely a very strange, disorienting place to be.
I don't think I've ever felt the significance, even though I should always feel this way because of the spiritual significance, but I think I've ever felt the significance of what we get to do more than I have in the last month or so. Maybe let's say November on, and even leading up to it, just the significance of being true to the gospel, being a different voice and a voice of just crazy for some, hopelessness for others, and I think that this is almost like, I don't want to be dramatic about it because it's really easy to go, this is the time, this is the moment, but like I really kind of do believe that this time. This really is the time for the church to really point somewhere different. Like I think the fact we're going through the Bible in a year right now on Sunday morning, I don't even mean just our own quiet times, like the Sunday morning I think is really significant for us because it forces us to like really be really be in the scriptures and really be in the storyline of the Bible and pointing to Christ and God's sovereignty and God's grace and God's holiness and God's people, what that means for us. I think what post-Trump church looks like right now is really having to put our money where our mouth is, to use that phrase, in terms of what is it that unites us. And I think that's hard. There's a reason why Jesus prayed for that, right? That's why it was on his heart in John 17, 2,000 years ago for the disciples, they would be one as, we be one in Christ, one together. When the church divides, and it's not new, Paul had to begin a letter basically to the Corinthian church about their divisions. When the church divides, it's usually over non-biblical matters that we think are supreme matters, because it's not they're unimportant.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1 Corinthians, Paul is writing to them that they're being immature and that he can't talk to them like regular Christians, like he should be able to. He has to give them milk instead of solid food because they're still worldly. And the example he gives in that context is they're fighting over Apollos and Paul and who they're with and leaders. And those are actually good leaders, right? Those are godly leaders. So I think that this is not new in terms of the church's struggle to maintain unity in the midst of worldly divisions, but it's much more polarizing to us now. I think this was a long time coming. In my recent history, I haven't been alive for a lot of presidents, but I was born the very last 2 months of Jimmy Carter. So basically, I remember Reagan. At the end of Reagan, I remember first Bush very well. I remember Clinton very well. But I think, but like no one like. Just I was a kid, but just in conversations, like you didn't hate, like if you until the Monica Lewinsky stuff happened, like you didn't like despise Bill Clinton, and people didn't despise Bush. I mean, I'm sure like hardcore, like really hardcore, but it wasn't like part of the rhetoric. I mean, it wasn't like you like people I think we saw in the Bush Gore election that it was so close and so contested and so controversial that we started seeing some division. Then September 11th brought us back for a little while, and then it's completely blew up because of the Iraq War. And that's where real division started. And then Obama was a significantly divisive figure. He just is a nice person, so he can kind of cover it up. I mean, the guy, lit the White House rainbow colors, and it would mock regularly, and then you come to the most divisive person I've ever seen, in Donald Trump. Yeah. And a lot of people voted for Trump as a result of Obama. And a lot of people voted for Biden as a result of Trump, right. More than policies, more than anything. So you just see this pattern continuing that eventually was going to swell up and explode. And then when you have someone that has the rhetoric like a Trump does, and then you have the parties becoming more and more opposite, and there's no real legitimate third person in a completely just binary system, it makes things really complicated, So I want to distinguish in my mind between someone who just voted because that's for basic policy reasons, which I understand. Just voted because that's what they lean progressive in their policies. They lean more conservative in their policies. I want to distinguish that person from someone who eats, sleeps, breathes, MAGA sticker on their car, like Facebook 24/7 about Trump, or 24/7 hate Trump on. I want to distinguish those people. So I think there's a place for the Christian in a binary, complicated system to make a really difficult decision to vote for someone, and someone who is all in unapologetic. I'm going to skirt around abortion. I'm going to skirt around sexual revolution. I'm going to skirt around Trump's moral character. I'm going to skirt around rhetoric towards refugees and minority groups. And, I'm going to that's a different conversation for me. I know I kind of went long there on that answer, but I think for us, I bring all that up to say we have inherited this incredibly divisive culture that's been building for years. And now as a church, we have to be very intentional about making sure Christ actually is above all, and that people of completely different political parties can sit in the same church under membership and be fine. That's much easier said than podcast done.
Sure.
Then much easier podcast said than real world done is what I meant to say. But
I think both of you kind of hit on some things that are really indicative of the fact that there's more polarization now, and even if it's not like across a lunch table more polarized, like what we hear and what we see and what we read, even from I'm not talking about 4chan, QAnon, like crazy conspiracy places. I'm just just on Fox News and CNN. I mean, those two outlets are far more polarized, and so then that spills into the way that we think about, political candidates, and the way that we view really the person next to us in the pew who made a decision on policy, whether or not we think their decision is right or wrong, that said, I'm going to vote for this person because of these policy matters, not because I think Trump is the savior or Biden is the savior to all the things that Trump did wrong, but that there is so much just tension and division and polarization in the political parties that you almost can't separate the extremes from. I mean, I think, Dean, you're trying to say like this is what we need to do, but you almost the way that culture talks about the right or the left, it's like you can't separate somebody who voted for Biden from Bernie Sanders and AOC in the same way that I think people on the left sometimes look at somebody who would vote for Trump and think that they are a Capitol storming MAGA Trump supporter, when that may or may not be the case. And so I think one of the things that I'm just curious what y'all's thoughts are is when we think about mission in that context, how where it is so polarizing, it's and people have an opinion on what the church is. How do we create a third way almost, like, this how do we think about things, and like, how do we think about policy, how do we think about character, how do we think about the people that we're voting for in a way that helps maybe missionally, I don't want to say bridge the divide, but create this third way and allow the church to thrive missionally without getting caught maybe in the fray of that division.
Well, I think something that I've been thinking about, we'll see if this makes sense, something I heard, I think David French say a while ago, so sometime last year, that, now culture leads politics. Like politics doesn't lead culture, culture leads politics. And something that I think about in relation to that is that there are multiple large groups of kind of different groups within our culture, or we'll just say different subgroups of culture, who are speaking up pretty loudly to say, here's the type of person that we want to be leading us, to be running our country. And there are like competing visions for that. And so when I think about, kind of this third way politically for Christians, like, because you'll hear some people say, well, as Christians, like, we shouldn't settle for either of these kind of polarizing figures, or either ends of the conservative liberal spectrum, or however you want to put that. We don't need to be bullied into one of those. We need to, kind of find this candidate who can truly reflect, what, not just Christian values, although we want that, but, someone who we in good conscience could align ourselves with, who advocates for the types of issues that Christians throughout history have cared about, because we look at the way that, Christ lived and the early church functioned and all of these different things, the different types or different groups in society that we care about, what have you. But I think the thing that is difficult about something like that, and again, this is just like my opinion, so many people could critique this and give much deeper wisdom, but I think something that will be interesting for Christians is like, Christians have been noticed throughout history for kind of countering the mainstream culture, for living counter culturally. And so if our culture is one that is obsessed with elevating a person and kind of this cult of personality, and if the way that if culture is driving politics, and the way that you can influence culture and politics is through power and platform, then how do you engage in all of that Christianly? Because we are a people who do not elevate power and status and platform and and worship those things and idolize those things in a human sense. Like, we ascribe all of that to God. So that's something that I really struggle with, is what does it actually look like to be a countercultural Christian, beyond simply saying, okay, I'm going to engage in the methods or the ways of political engagement that exist before me, that are man-made and flawed, and I'm going to do it to the best of my settled conscience, in light of my relationship with the Lord, and in seeking wisdom and in seeking truth. So I don't know, that was a lot of rambling, but I think, and then missionally, like, so coming kind of back down from that onto like just the ground level, one-on-one, I don't think in some ways that anything changes for us, in the sense that we are still called to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbors as ourselves, excuse me, and to seek justice, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. Like, that doesn't change no matter who is in office. And so as we go through, varying degrees of feeling like we as Christians are represented politically in different ways, missionally, the person sitting next to me at church on Sunday, or the person in my, book club, or my neighbor on my street, I'm still called to love those people, and I have to find ways to do that. And disagreement, like love, can cover those things. And so, I think we kind of have to surrender our human desire to want to be right, to want to be in power, like to want to feel like we're on the right side of things. Like we all feel those things, right? Like you want to feel like you're sitting in the right seat. But that I just don't think that that's something that as Christians we can be comfortable in, or be caring about too much. Because I just think we're always going to be, hopefully, I would hope that we're, always at odds with something, no matter which party we're in, no matter, who we're following, because these are, these are fallen human beings, and we have to remember that. So I do think, to your question, there's a huge opportunity still for mission, that yes, we should be informed and aware, because politics now is just such a huge part of American life, and it just seems to permeate, like, every podcast that I listen to has done segments on the election and on where America is now politically and culturally, and like politics and culture are just kind of starting to really fuse together. I mean, I heard somebody say this year, they're like, I don't remember ever before caring so much about like the celebrities that I follow, like who they're voting for, until this year, when every single celebrity that I follow on Instagram, or influencer, or whoever, is speaking to, what their political opinions are. Like, so politics and culture are really like married now, and popular culture is starting to absorb so much more of that. And maybe, I'm sure it always has in a lot of ways. I mean, you think about like SNL and other, other ways that politics has been like fodder for mainstream, pop culture or whatever. It's just that I think also, as I'm 32, so as I'm getting older and starting to see, more of this as the norm, but social media adds a whole new element to that. So all this stuff is going to continue to swirl, and I think it's going to continue to get harder and probably get more difficult, or get, kind of worse for Christians. But at the end of the day, I mean, the way that we have, really influenced culture has been by continuing to be about the things that Jesus was about, and loving people. And that sounds, so kind of oversimplified, but it is what it is, So I think we have to be able to embrace that and say, okay, then in the hard places of life, how does that actually shake out? And there's no way you can know that unless you're actually walking with the Lord and praying about it.
It's really good.
Yeah, that's really well said, Ashlyn. I want to, missionally, I think we need to see maybe a reset of what are we known for? What as Christians are we known for? Because a lot of Christians, a lot of people who aren't Christians, I know when they think Christian, they think Trump supporter.
Mm-hmm.
You also don't want to have a posture of, hey, I'm not that kind of Christian. Got to be careful of that too. Luke 18, the Pharisee, got to think I'm not like that other guy down there. So we have to be careful how that posture comes through. Because there's also people who are who love Jesus, but voted for Trump and are pretty hurt right now. I had a friend tell me this over lunch, who's a very big Trump supporter, and it was very helpful for me to kind of gain where he was, because the attitude was that the church that are more like, I guess, non-God and country churches, that they just kind of think everybody who voted for Trump is a cult member and is, and it's compromised their faith and all these kind of things. And he was pretty broken to me about that. Like, they saying that was not, I've searched my heart 100 times about this, and that's not where I was. I really am concerned about progressive politics. I don't think it's best for our country. Mm-hmm. And that's why I voted the way that I did. Like, I wouldn't let Trump babysit my kids, which sounds strange. I vote for him for president, but I'm voting for him, he would say, because I really do believe that for that position, this was the best thing for our country, was those policies. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to, we need to be people that have level heads enough and give grace enough and understand enough to go, okay, again, once again, in a binary system, that's not crazy. Okay. Yeah. So but the reality is there are, and this is not some fringe thing, there are a lot of people, again, not a fringe, who are unbelievers, that when they think Christian, they think Trump's. That is a problem, okay? That is a massive mission. I'm going to go as far as say it's a missional crisis, for us right now. And as if it's not hard enough to reach somebody already, right? So I think that we have to, and I don't think the way we do that is is as campaign wise or like, hey, we're not like those people wise. I think sometimes you need to speak to that and go, hey, that's not me. If you see something online that's loud, I think sometimes we need to go, hey, just so you know, I don't stand with that. Just so you have a platform and have people look to you for things. But I think the best place that's going to happen is in individual conversations and relationships where there's 2 or 3 friends that assume because you go to an evangelical church, or you're known to be a Christian, or that you weren't supporting Biden on your social media or whatever that might have been, that you are this like capital, this capital protest, kind of person. I think those conversations really need to happen because then once those conversations happen, that's not self-righteous. That's not you going, I'm not like everybody else. It's going, hey, look, I acknowledge that this is what it looks like, and there are people like that, but I would say that's not how we disciple people at our church, and we do not think those things are one and the same. And in fact, my faith I have here would be the exact same faith I had if I moved to Poland tomorrow. Like here, it's not contingent upon who's in the White House. It's not contingent on America. And let's just kind of sort through that. And what questions do you have? And what made you think that? Well, the Christians I know, okay, I acknowledge that. Have I ever shown you that? Yeah, I might have, I might, post about things that I think are crazy, or I might, I am going to continue to be pro-life. Here's why I am pro-life. You know what? You might ask your friend, so as a Christian, I'm pro defending the unborn, and I'm also what will probably be classified as pretty liberal considered when it comes to immigration and treatment of refugees.
Yeah.
What does that make me? Like that kind of stuff. You're not trying to stump somebody. You're trying to make them go, oh, wait. This is not as black and white as I thought it was, these 2 camps and those type of things. So I consider myself that, somebody who's very passionate about the unborn. And at the same time, if we just had to do labels, I know we don't love labels, but labels, I would be considered liberal regarding my view on immigration, and all those things are a pro-life ethic for me. So there's not really a category for that in American life, but I think you're going to see more of a category of that. We don't have a third party for that. I don't think we're going to, but I think that we're going to learn what it really means to be sojourners and exiles, and to really live as God's people, where the systems that we have in place right now, and by systems I mean the categories more or less, aren't going to fit us very well or perfectly, and they, as Ashlyn kind of talked about, they shouldn't. She's talked about there should always be a little bit of a rub or a tension, if we line up perfectly with an American system, and here's what's hard about some of the Trump stuff. I've never met a Christian who would admit that politics can come before God in their life. Never met that person. Because over time, they have warped them together to the point where they think it's one and the same. So they're wrong. You can be generally wrong. So Dr. Merritt always says you can be sincerely wrong. Yes. They believe that it's one and the same. So they must think they're like fighting for Christ and like the cause of Christ by their politics, when really the wars you see, we're going through the Old Testament right now, the wars you see, I'm studying Leviticus and Numbers right now, I'm getting ready to do Joshua. The wars that you see are wars against idolatry is what they are. They're not wars against people. Yes, there were people that received it, but really they're wars against idolatry. Like that's what God hates, So I think we have to really, I said this earlier, I can't think of a more perfect time for us to be going through the Bible in a year like we're doing. Yeah. We're forced to really just be solely in this. What does this mean? And our people are really responding to it, which I think is showing that I think a lot of people are over it, and they want something, and they're ready to, I don't know if move on is the right way to put it, but they're just ready to say, okay, there has to be more than this, right? There has to be.
Yeah.
So I think there's a wide open door.
Yeah.
With work to do on that door. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a wide open door with termites and needs to be painted. And,
Yeah. But it's still a functional door.
Yeah, screens hanging out, Yeah.
So I think one of the things that comes to mind is I think about the missional opportunity is as a staff, Dean, you've been in our staff meetings leading us through a small book by Tim Keller called How to Reach the West Again. And it's free. I think it's free for everybody. If you go Google it, it's like 60 pages. It's a really fascinating read, but and it's quick, and I think it's really helpful in framing some of this conversation.
Classic Keller.
But one of the things that there's a quote from a Roman emperor talking about Christians that he basically says that their treatment of the poor is both offensive and attractive, and I think in a lot of ways missionally, we have the opportunity to actually live out the scriptures and not to align ourselves with right or left. Because I think, as I look at the church at large, I see there are people that are overreacting on both sides. Like I see Christians that personally, I'm just troubled by the celebration of Biden just in some of the policies that he's passed through executive order in the very first few days. And so I think we have to be careful not to worship our president, whether they're a donkey or an elephant. Like there's just a lot of caution there. But I think like this opportunity to have a faith that's attractive and offensive. So like this idea of being very serious pro-life, protecting life in the womb, and also saying, how do we care for the refugee and the immigrant? That's an example of what that looks like, to say this isn't really compatible with what culture says evangelical Christians are.
Yeah, returning to the soul of America, like Ashton said, what does that mean? That doesn't, I think some people think it means like fully embracing the sexual revolution and things like that. Yeah. It's like it should make a swing so far back to the, and we have that's a kind of tendency thing, people to swing extremes, and I worry about that, that they mean that the answer to Trump is people totally swinging, and I think a lot of it's that I'm not one of those kind of Christians. They almost want to be accepted, by like, I guess, left-leaning things, like important for them on social media to have like the kind of the elites like them, But here's how you know it's a problem in Christian, like, and I'm not talking about even Capitol people that storm the Capitol. I'm talking about like Facebook Christian, this person online that's so serious about Trump. You know that you're at another level of idolatry and there's serious problems here when all of a sudden Tim Keller's not on your team.
Yeah.
And you hate Russell Moore and you can't stand David French. That's what's happened. They probably even know who these guys are. They've only read like one little thing. They declared them to be a problem and Marxist, and and it's like, okay, that's when
we've gone crazy.
The Gospel Coalition's bad. It's like, wow, okay, that's when we're at a new place.
Well, and I think another, just as we think about this, like another opportunity for the church is to participate in a two-party political system in a way, Ashlyn, that you were talking about, that like it provides, like, where really we don't have a home and we can sit down and I think you said this, over relationship, have some nuanced conversation, but to where we say like, yeah, I'm not at home here, but this is the best decision that I could make in a two-party system where I was not, violating my conscience and trying to do what I think on a policy level is the best thing for the way that our faith lives out. But like at the end of the day, my hope isn't in whoever this political party or person is, and I'm just going to try to live faithfully as a Christian, united around the things of the scriptures, and to say that these people are Orthodox Christians and claim to be, and there's nothing, outside of like a loony blog, there's nothing to make me think that, they're not, Orthodox Christians. They're on my team far more than, the writer of.
Yeah, and I think you can think they're wrong.
Yeah. And
in a relationship, you can ask for an explanation. I think if we're really in community together, we owe each other that, right? Like how could you vote for him? How could you vote for her? Like, I'd like to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just really want to know. Yeah, right. I mean, Ashlyn, there's a place for that, right?
Yeah. I mean, a couple things, just as I listen to you guys talk, that come to mind. One, kind of as we think about, okay, what have the last 4 years taught us about ourselves and, how we engage with others in light of politics. I mean, one, I think we all knew this. I hope we all knew this before 4 years ago, but just thinking about like how self-centered we are in America. Like we'll say like America is an idea. America in the scope of global history is a very young idea. Like
overrated or underrated?
Oh my gosh. I mean, like America is not 250 years old, and then and also the fact that this election season about broke all of us, and yet most of us couldn't lay out the, half of the geography of Europe. You know what I mean? Just like, so I'm just trying to like put this in perspective for myself to say like, in the moments where I felt like this year really in 2020 really might be my undoing, it's like, okay, let me step back and remember that this is a big world and now, of course, we have to acknowledge like America is one of the most powerful countries in the world. Like we do matter on a global scale immensely. So I'm not trying to downplay these things, but I am also for Christians trying to say that, the outcome of one election, while yes, you can say that it is very important and also that it is not the most important thing in the history of the world. the entire world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, and so
If the Bible says that our life is like a mist, what is an election cycle?
yeah, and so I just like that really weighs on me for how we have to find some way of still finding some levity and like living life without the crushing weight of it's almost like as if all of us want to feel what the weight of like being the president is. You know what I mean? Like it's just like we can't. We are not meant to bear some of this stuff, I think, that we take upon ourselves. But so I do want us as Christians to be thinking about, that's something I want to be thinking about for myself. Like, how can I pull all the way down to just me as one, tiny little person? How can I repent of self-centeredness and thinking that, I and my problems and the American problems are the center of the world, even though the world is watching? I mean, I just frankly, like, I am more connected. Well, and let me also say, as we kind of become, we're sort of like all watching each other to figure out, I think it's revealed like our judgmental hearts, just honestly. I mean, I think we're all watching, not always to understand, but a lot of times to judge, And so to your point, Dean, when you're talking about, in a relationship or in a friendship, we should be able to ask, like, why did you vote this way? Or what do you think about these things? We need to be able to listen, to truly understand, and not listening to judge, because that really is not our place. Now, yes, of course, we can ask questions. Asking a question to someone, asking a clarifying question is not pronouncing judgment on someone. But we also just have to be I'm just speaking of my own sinful heart. It is so easy for me to judge people, even if in my mind I think I'm listening or I'm trying to really help this person see the light or see truth. Yeah, but I might also be judging them in that moment. And so, when I think about a lot of these conversations that we have, and then I think about the fact that, we have, I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but, we have brothers and sisters living in China who are, secretly, of being faithful Christians.
That's real.
We have to realize that the way that they go about their lives in the context and the government and, everything, that the way that their lives are structured, there would be a lot of things that we might look at and say, like, that's not quote unquote right. Or you have to make compromises in your day-to-day life in order to live, and yet they're still trying to follow Christ. And so I just think that we also, I think we take our freedom for granted. I think we take, we are so quick to, I don't know. It's just, I think it's revealed a lot of our self-righteousness and just the deep sins that are in our hearts. And we should be grateful for that, because that means that as a Christian, like, if the past 4 years if God has by his grace allowed you to see some bad things in yourself, that is freedom. It really is. I would much rather be able to look and see, I want to be understood. I want people to think I'm right. I want to be right. I want to be on the, quote unquote, the right side of history, or whatever you want to say. All of that is a wash before the cross. And so if we really are starting to see, I think that's something, like, we are only responsible for ourselves. Now, yes, we are responsible for, like, and obviously there's a different weight in church leadership and things like that. But, and we want to be faithful as we shepherd people. We don't want to lead people astray. So I'm not trying to be, like, super individualistic here. But I think if we can come to terms with the worst things in ourselves, G.K. Chesterton is quoted as saying, what's wrong with the world, or responding to that question, what's wrong with the world, sir? I am. If we can, like, not in a cheesy way, but like in a genuine way, that also doesn't send us into despair, approach things with true humility, I actually think the next 4 years, having nothing to do with who is president, but because of the cultural moment we're in, I have a great hope that we actually could find a lot of freedom as Christians to shed off some of the sin and some of the, bad postures of our hearts that Satan loves, that he wants to see weigh us down, that corrupts the church and it hinders our witness, and all the things that prevent us from being able to share Christ with our country. So I don't know. These are just things that I think about.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that in that you talked about is this idea that really, like, for a lot of us, that the last 4 years has revealed this oftentimes judgmental kind of heart that we have a very quick, like, posture to put onto other people, to make judgments, and then to also to realize, like, maybe, oh wait, I saw this just wrong, and I need to kind of repent from that and live differently. And Dean, I know you've had some conversations with people who have gone through that and said, like, I don't know how I got so deep into just being, like, totally absorbed and thinking that I was fighting for Christ. In reality, like, politics was the God that I had replaced, Christ with. And so how because I think this is maybe in the same way that we need to change the perception of what it means to be a Christian engaged in politics to non-believers. There's also Christians in our churches on both sides of the aisle who have gone headfirst into politics, and it's become a god. And the Lord has been very kind and gracious to reveal that to them. And so how do we create, just as a church, a place where people who can say, you know what, like, I need to repent of my idolatry of politics, and for the church to be a place that's an open, welcoming, not I told you so judgmental.
Yeah, I think a gospel-centered culture, people become aware that okay, this is where I can come running home, and I know somebody who had I think God took him here, I really do, to the Capitol for the protest. He didn't storm it or anything like that, but he was there, and his eyes were open. He basically was like, what the heck am I doing? What has happened to me? What has become of me? This makes me on fire for Christ. Mm-hmm. He went back to the airport and flew home at the moment, went home, and reached out to me, and, we met, and it all was well. But you know what happened to that person for a long time away from church? It never came back after Corona, not for health reasons, just like more like just out of the habit, some little bit of fear, but not like actual health for him. And that's interesting, because you're going to fill your time with something else. He wasn't in any kind of Christian community at all. It became about, another thing is we have to reject things that are conspiracies and lies. Christians are people of truth, so we have to actually speak to that. And it's not a fringe person. More people are buying into that stuff than you might think. The average person might think. So he was neck deep. I mean, in all the websites and all the YouTube videos and then before long he starts believing this is happening, and then I have to do something about it. It's my duty, type of thing. So it just took that being exposed in his heart, and then what we should do. He repented. He truly repented, and I think we need to be the biggest cheerleaders for that. Not what about and I told you so, or about it's true. That's the business, right?
Yeah.
That's the gospel business, right? Is that? So I was thankful to see that, and I'm hoping to see more of it. I've seen people leave churches over politics. They claim other reasons, but really, if they're being really honest, it was political stuff. There's people who are mad at me because I didn't speak up for Trump stuff from the pulpit, and I've gotten crap before for praying for him. It's a complicated time to be in ministry because of these things. But this is whether we realize or not what we signed up for, to walk people through these difficult times as a church as a whole, individually, but also like as our like the at-large church, city church, and that's what we all do together. So I just hope more people can see it, that we want to participate. We want to, whatever that looks like for you, and here's a comparison that I always want to be this church. We have Governor DeSantis's deputy chief of staff as a member here. Mm-hmm. And we also have a very faithful volunteer that I follow on social media who volunteers every Sunday. And this person's feed is always like very progressive politics, it was very, like anti-Trump, pro Stacey Abrams, and pro, like on and on and on and on. And nothing that's out of bounds, just like very much into all that.
Yeah.
And they both go to the same church, and they both are growing here and love it here. And I like being in that church. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm not saying we don't have exceptions to that, but I want to be a church where that happens. I know someone who was at a church in the county over from us last Sunday, just one county over, and they walked out, and they're not political at all. If anything, they're like kind of cultural Christians and kind of do the family church thing. Like we kind of go with grandma because you have to.
Yep.
They walked out of their church service on Sunday because the pastor, very like 30-person church, was spelling off all the conspiracy theories from the pulpit. And this is like a regular, it's not some like snake handling, this is like a regular church. And they walked out. Yeah, it's like these things are happening. These are pastors, so we've got to shine a different light. We've just got to. And we also got to stand for righteousness. And that's going to look different. That's not going to follow a party line. It's not.
Yeah, I think in all of this, as we think about this, in the same way that, I think, Ashlyn, at the very beginning, you brought up this saying that people have said, like, oh, it's time to heal the soul of America, or to unify America. And when I hear that, it's interesting to me that that's the same language from the other side that was very, and I'm not for Make America Great Again, that language because I'm like, when was it great and who was it great for? But I'm also like, when was the soul of America healed? It hasn't been.
Hey, what does that even mean?
And
Like,
so,
Ashland said, what does that even mean?
yeah, it's like the way to heal the soul of America is through Jesus.
Absolutely.
And we've never done that. And so, and I mean, my opinion is they're not doing that this time around either. But that's the opportunity for the church to say, hey, we have a different hope. And let's point people to that.
Yeah, and I do think it's going to be harder the more that we and I'm not going to say too much about this because then I'm like I'm out of my pay grade, but I think it's going to be really hard considering the fact that we do not have like a shared moral compass in America, you know? So even thinking about like the soul of America as like, you know, what are the kind of like deep things that unite us? Like that's not shared, you know, there isn't like one kind of standard of morality that's embraced in our country. And so that, again, it's just as we fight for unity, that's going to be very difficult. But thankfully, as Christians, you know, we have a different and better way to approach that. So.
Yeah, because America can be divided. I don't want it to be, but it can. The church can't.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, functionally it can, but in terms of significance, you know, like that we can't afford. No, we can afford for America to be divided. It's going to stink, and it does stink. Not gonna, it does. But the church, we have to fight to be united. That's our first priority.
Good stuff. Well, as we wrap up this episode of the Local Dive, we're going to jump back real quick for the Local on Tap to what we started with, that same theme of overrated, underrated. We're not going to talk about things that we might think are overrated in Tallahassee because there's nothing that is overrated. Everything is underrated.
Everything is peachy.
But what is an underrated aspect to living in Tallahassee? What's something that you think that is underrated in Tallahassee?
An underrated thing in Tallahassee is Starbucks. No, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
I would say our placements of Starbucks are overrated. I know we're not supposed to say anything overrated, but
bad placements.
We need more and better placements of Starbucks.
I'm with you. That's very fair. Underrated in Tallahassee is, I'm going to go, sorry, I'd like to think through this for a minute. I am going to go with a restaurant, shocker. Z Barty's.
Oh.
Often forgotten, very underrated.
Yes.
One of the best restaurants, Tallahassee.
Very
No one ever
Italian.
talks about it.
It is, as
so
somebody who
true.
drives by it almost, definitely daily when I go in and out of our neighborhood, I'm happy to report it is at least well attended.
Good.
Because the parking lot has
limited
been,
seating, but good.
The parking lot has been full, which I appreciate.
I just think it's I think it's very underrated.
I'm going to follow on the trend of food places because I feel like that's all we talk about in the Local on Tap. But Treva's Pastries and Fine Foods, I believe it's called. It's off of Capitol Circle. And it's just like a little independently owned bakery, but they have, I mean, all kinds of good stuff. I'm going to recommend their cannolis if you're a cannoli person.
One of our worship leaders, Gianna Hall, is a big fan of cannolis.
Okay, well, Gianna, if you're listening, go to
right,
Treva's. But yeah, they have a lot of like Italian desserts, but it's not only Italian food. But that is sort of like the theme or genre, I guess, of a lot of their entrees. But they make like takeaway food too that you can get.
Where on Capitol Circle?
Capitol Circle Northeast, kind of like behind Bumpa's.
Okay, how underrated is it? I've never heard of it. So that's strong.
Yeah.
That's a strong.
It's not well known.
Well, good pick.
But it is like if it's like you want to go in, pick something behind the glass counter, and like when they run out, they've run out, and they have a little bit of everything. But it's very good.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I am going to say one of the most underrated aspects of living in this city is nothing is actually that far. So
true.
So true. It drives me crazy when people would say something's far. That's ridiculous.
Like there's really no such thing as far in Tallahassee. You can get from the very north part of the city to the very south part of the city in like less than 30 minutes. So everything is close, even if it doesn't feel close because you've gotten so used to driving 5 minutes. But like the fact that you can get, I mean, I wish Tallahassee was bigger, but I love that everything is like close. So
Oh,
that's my
people
underrated
complain about drives.
aspect.
That's just so far out.
Yeah.
That's just like seriously.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like you used to live in Orlando.
yeah, where you go 20 minutes of Publix.
Right, like, easy, Tiger. But anyways, went a little over on time. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next week as we start a series all about dating, marriage, relationships for the month of February.
Let's
Should
go.
be good
All
times.
right.
Yeah.
Go Bucks. See you
Go
next week.
Bucks.
Thanks for listening to The Local Dive, a podcast diving into deep and shallow musings about Christ, the church, and culture. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow The Local Dive on social media and continue the conversation with us on Instagram and Twitter at The Local Dive Pod.